Kaldr, the Ancient Apparition. Before time existed, before the first flicker of starlight illuminated the vast emptiness, Kaldr existed. He was not born, nor was he created. He was, in a sense, a reflection of the infinite void, a ghost of what was and what would come. He is older than time itself, a frozen specter lingering in the nothingness that predated the universe. He came from the cold, unfeeling darkness that stretched across the cosmos, an entity whose origins were shrouded in the vastness of the unknown. Kaldr was not a living being in the way that mortals would understand life. He was more like an echo, an ancient projection from outside time. He didn't feel as they did, didn't think as they did. His was a mind as cold and impenetrable as the deepest void, untouched by desire, untouched by emotion. But in his own way, he was aware of everything. Before the stars burned brightly in the sky, the void was everything. It stretched endlessly, an eternal, cold silence where nothing stirred. Kaldr was born of this void, a projection of the infinite stillness. While the void was boundless and empty, Kaldr observed it in its entirety. He watched, though there was nothing to see. He listened, though there was no sound to hear. The void was his domain, and he was content in its frozen grip. But then a flicker, a ripple of warmth in the stillness. The void, timeless and eternal, was interrupted by something it had never known, creation. Stars, burning with unimaginable heat, sprang to life in a sudden blaze of energy. Galaxies swirled into existence, and from the stardust, planets formed. The universe unfolded before Kaldr's unblinking gaze, and for the first time, he witnessed the birth of light. But Kaldr remained indifferent. This new cosmos, filled with warmth and motion, was still insignificant compared to the endless stretch of the void. He watched, but he did not care. Creation was fleeting. The stars that now burned so brightly would eventually flicker out, and all that was created would once again return to the cold stillness from which it came. For Kaldr, it was all part of a cycle he understood all too well. Creation would give way to destruction. Light would be swallowed by darkness, and warmth would be consumed by the cold. Eons passed. The stars burned, planets spun, and from dust, life was born. Civilizations rose and fell. Gods and heroes battled for dominion over their worlds, and in the midst of it all, Kaldr remained unmoved. He watched as life took root in the universe, as beings of flesh and blood built their empires and kingdoms, as they fought wars, made peace, and waged battles in the name of love, power, and survival. To Kaldr, it was all so fleeting. Life and death, creation and destruction, they were mere flickers of existence in the face of eternity. The universe, in all its brilliance, was little more than a brief flash of warmth that would one day fade into cold, empty silence. Yet, Kaldr wasn't entirely alone. He was one of many spirits, cosmic forces that existed within the universe, each born from different aspects of creation. There were spirits of light, beings of fire, forces of chaos and order. Each of these spirits reveled in their power, twisting the fabric of reality to suit their desires. They shaped the destinies of worlds, fought for control, and drove the evolution of the cosmos. Kaldr, however, remained a passive observer. Unlike the other spirits, he had no desire to influence the course of events. He was content to watch from the shadows, letting the forces of creation and destruction play their eternal game. He was the cold presence at the edge of reality, the reminder that all things, no matter how powerful, would one day come to an end. But time, even for the cosmos, marched on, and as the universe aged, something began to change. The stars, once bright and burning, began to dim. Galaxies collided, and planets fell into ruin. Life, once so vibrant, began to falter. And as the universe began to decay, Kaldr began to grow stronger. It was as if the universe, in its dying breath, was feeding him. With every star that burned out, with every planet that fell into silence, Kaldr's presence grew more tangible. He had always been a shadow, a faint echo of the cold void beyond time. But now, As the universe approached its twilight, Kaldr's grip began to tighten. The cold was spreading. Kaldr's power was unlike anything the other spirits possessed. It was not fire or light, not chaos or order. His was the power of the void, the power of the cold that stopped all things. Where Kaldr passed, life withered. Motion ceased. Warmth was extinguished. His very presence was enough to bring an end to the dance of the stars, to freeze the fabric of existence itself. It wasn't destruction in the way that mortals feared it. It was stillness, silence, the absence of life, of warmth, of motion. Kaldr was the embodiment of the end, not the violent end of a supernova, but the slow, inevitable freezing of all things. The signs of Kaldr's approach were subtle at first. A star would grow cold, its light fading more quickly than it should. A planet, once teeming with life, would fall silent. The universe, vast and seemingly eternal, began to feel Kaldr's icy grasp tightening around it. And the other spirits, they began to notice. They felt the shift in the cosmos, the slow, creeping cold that signaled the end of all things. For the first time in eons, the spirits of creation and destruction turned their attention to Kaldr. They had always known of his presence, of course, but now they felt his power growing, and they feared what it might mean for the universe. In the midst of this growing cold, two spirits, ancient beings of unimaginable power, found themselves locked in a cosmic conflict. One was a spirit of light, born from the first flicker of creation. The other was a spirit of darkness, a force of entropy and chaos. They had always been in opposition, but now, as the universe neared its end, their battle had reached a fever pitch. Kaldr observed this war with the same indifferent curiosity he had always had. He cared little for the outcome. Whether light triumphed over darkness or chaos consumed order, it made no difference to him. In the end, all things would fall to the cold. But the spirits, they noticed Kaldr's presence, and they began to pull him into their conflict. Kaldr had no desire to take sides in the war between the spirits. To him, their conflict was just another moment in the grand cycle of the universe. But something was different this time. He could feel it, a pull, a force drawing him closer to the center of the conflict. At first, he resisted, but the pull grew stronger, more insistent. It was as if the very fabric of the cosmos was calling out to him, demanding his involvement. He didn't understand it, but he couldn't ignore it. The closer Kaldr came to the conflict, the more powerful he became. The cold within him grew stronger, and with it, a new sensation stirred, a sense of purpose. For the first time in eons, Kaldr felt something more than passive observation. He felt compelled. But what was compelling him? The spirits' war was reaching its breaking point, and Kaldr could feel the universe itself hanging in the balance. The forces of creation and destruction were pushing the cosmos to its limit, and Kaldr was being drawn into the very heart of it. Kaldr had always been above the petty struggles of the universe. He was an observer, a neutral force, content to watch as the cycle of life and death played out. But now, as the universe neared its end, he found himself at a crossroads. He could remain neutral, as he always had. He could let the spirits of light and darkness destroy each other, and in the end, his icy grip would bring all things to a final, frozen halt. But something deep within him had changed. As the war raged on, Kaldr's power continued to grow. He was no longer just a shadow at the edge of existence. He was becoming something more, something stronger. His icy grip spread across the cosmos, freezing stars and planets in its path. And the spirits, they began to fear him. They had always seen Kaldr as a passive force, a distant echo of the end. But now, as his power grew, they realized that Kaldr was not just an apparition. He was the end itself, the force that would bring the universe to its final, silent conclusion. The moment finally came when Kaldr could no longer remain on the sidelines. The pull was too strong, the call too loud. He stepped out of the shadows, his icy presence casting a cold, terrible light across the cosmos. His arrival was devastating. The spirits of light and darkness, once locked in a brutal struggle for control of the universe, found themselves facing a force beyond their understanding. Kaldr's very presence froze the fabric of reality, halting the war in its tracks. But this was only the beginning. Kaldr now stood at the center of the cosmic conflict, his power growing with every passing moment. The universe trembled in his icy grasp, and the spirits, once so powerful, could do nothing to stop him. But Kaldr was faced with an impossible choice. The war between the spirits had drawn him in, but now he had to decide. Would he side with one of the spirits, tipping the balance of the cosmos? Or would he remain true to his nature, bringing an end to all things? Whatever decision he made, one thing was clear. The fate of the universe rested in Kaldr's frozen hands, and his next step would change everything forever.